I hereby open the January 21st, 2020 regular city council meeting for the city of East Lansing. First order of business is a roll call from the clerk.
Councilmember Beckott.
Present.
Councilmember Gregg.
Here.
Councilmember Meadows.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Byer.
Here. Next, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
I will move that.
Second.
Any comments or additions to the agenda? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The agenda is adopted. The next is the approval of the minutes from January 7th, 2020 and January 14th, 2020. Can I
I'll
have a
move
motion?
approval of the minutes of the January 7th meeting, city council discussion only.
Seconded by Councilmember Babcock. Did I hear that? Yes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the January 24th minutes,
Or January 14th.
or sorry, January 14th,
I will move approval of those minutes.
I'll second that.
moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. All of our housekeeping is finished.
We also have the January 18th.
It's not on here. Oh,
I will move approval of the city council special meeting, 18th of January minutes from our meeting at the Hands Center.
moved and seconded by Councilmember Babcock. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have those minutes adopted too. Do we have a
So-
more current agenda on this then? Mine doesn't have everything on it.
It doesn't have anything on
No.
So maybe there's a clarification, or is that,
I'm just refreshing now because
Maybe mine's not on this refresh. Was it removed?
Can you refresh again to see?
it.
so,
On iCompass, it does have the 18th minutes. It must be the printed version.
Okay.
of the report.
As mayor, I'm using the printed version because,
You're living in the past.
so here's my question. So we had that meeting after the agenda was posted. Is that the reason why these were added on, or did we?
no, we didn't.
Well, because it would have been the 18th. We posted the agenda on the Friday before, and that was the meeting on Saturday.
Yeah, so in order,
That should come up the next meeting we have.
but then we're 3 weeks out getting it approved, so is there a problem putting it on to get approved now?
Our
So-
guidelines established the agenda as of noon on Friday.
Okay.
So-
Well, then that's unfortunate. We just need to.
So.
Do we take a vote on
We
that?
can remove it?
Can we reconsider the vote by which the minutes passed?
Why don't we just approve them? I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've approved them. All right, the next section of the agenda is communications, and the first part of that is all the communications that we received in the mail have been posted online. That's our goal. If there's anything that you've sent that you don't see there, please let me know. And the next, communications from the audience. I have 3 cards, but if anybody wants to speak, they can. Are you one of these?
I'm not.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
My name is Phil Shepard. I've lived in the city for over 50 years and in my current house for 25. After retiring, I started having a dog. I didn't want to have one before then because I don't want to keep it home all day alone. It's cruel to dogs. Well, soon after I got my first dog, I learned about East Lansing's ordinance that you use a shock collar in place of, that is to say, an electronic leash in place of a physical leash in public spaces. And that was a godsend for me because I had a rather rambunctious golden retriever. He's a great dog, wouldn't hurt a flea, but he needed the run in the meadow. And we lived 2 blocks from Harrison Meadow, so that was just wonderful. You know, he could get out every day with the shock collar and he could run the meadow if he needed to, and much healthier and happier for it. I have a second dog now, the same kind of a story. She's part some kind of a herding dog and she needs to run. She's very high strung, and so we do the same thing. Now, I understand there's been some concern and talk about basically scrapping the ordinance that says I can use an electronic leash. That would be very sad for me, and here's why I think it's a grave mistake. Think about who has dogs, how they handle them. Do you think that a person that spends several $100s on a collar for their dog and then trains them so they can use it is the likely person to have a dangerous dog out there that's going to hurt somebody? Or is it the irresponsible owner that has done no training, doesn't exercise their dog regularly, and they take them out, they put them on a leash because it's their only hope of controlling them? That's a dangerous dog, potentially. But the problem isn't basically here the dog. There are no dogs that are born bad. I'm sorry. They aren't wolves. They aren't killing machines like the late Middle Ages thought they were. You know, we know from science today that they're loving creatures, that they're capable of forming lifelong bonds of affection with other creatures, including human beings. Well, those of us that care about our dogs, we like to take care of them. So I ask you, do you want to gut that law and take it out on the good owners that are taking care of their dogs? Do you really think it's the dogs that are off leash, that have been trained and have owners that care enough about them to do that? Or are the dangerous ones that are going to be hurting people? That doesn't make any sense at all to me. And I know there are people that have real serious issues and questions when they see dogs out in the park. And they don't see them they become concerned. I've met maybe a half a dozen of these people over the years. And some of them will understand that the dog isn't dangerous, even though they feel afraid of it, and go on, and some won't. The last person I met, my little 30-pound mutt, she was barely 2, and she barked at a jogger going by, and the jogger got so upset. She was phobic about dogs. That became very clear from her behavior and the things she said to me. Her parting comment was, "I hope your dog gets run over by a car." Well, okay, I'm sorry she feels that way. I'm sorry she's having the problem she is about her feelings about dogs. But people that have phobias of dogs, they need to take responsibility for their phobias and do something about it. And I'd be happy to help them. But the way to do it isn't to gut this rule. It's the only place I know of in Michigan that has such an enlightened ordinance. Please keep it. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ray Blassen. Are you here, Ray? And, oh, the deer?
My friends, I have copies here for the council. Thank you, George. While those are being passed around, I just want to tell you that I am Ray Lawson. I've lived in East Lansing since 1971. And I love the city and I love the people. And I am very close to loving the city council as well. So, and I've worked with some of you before, and congratulations to others that I have not met before. By way of reference, I wanted to share that I was pleased to be a member of the financial health team that undertook 4 years ago when Mr. Meadows was mayor, I believe, to take a look at the large and growing legacy deficit that existed, that was truly a citywide problem. I was able to be not only on the committee, but on 4 of the 6 subcommittees. The important thing to note was that all members of the committee and subcommittees were technically competent. They brought tremendous skills to the analysis that they helped conduct, and to the recommendations that they helped create, and to the aiding of the city council to take action on those technically based recommendations. At no time prior to the analysis or during the analysis did anyone call for a citywide vote by largely uninformed citizens to determine whether they should proceed with the analysis, proceed with making recommendations, or that the city should proceed to take action. It was understood that that the city would do that. The damage and threats from the deer are not a citywide problem. I know you've heard a good deal about them. Therefore, they should be treated as a severe but localized problem. In the past, if our city is confronted with a local water or sewer system problem, a local contamination problem, a local flooding problem, or a limited wind damage problem, it did not institute a citywide vote about whether it should analyze the problem and take action to remedy it. Instead, the city identified its technicians and others it drew upon for technical consultation to quickly analyze the problem, develop a plan for its remedy, and institute preventive measures to preclude its reoccurrence. That process is a very good process, and it works quite well. The problem in question, the deer problem, is an unchecked growing deer population in specific parts of East Lansing, where the damage is major and the threats to nearby residents and the public are localized and severe. It's logical that the problem be addressed directly by city government through the best consultations, and then take remedial action based on those consultations. And the city council and government need not and should not create a potential roadblock to its remedial actions to check the herd growth and its increasing damage and threats. As deer specialists may have told you, the deer population is growing unchecked in this unnatural environment. Some people say, well, it's a natural environment. It's not. It's an unnatural environment. There are no predators to diminish deer herds and keep the remaining deer population healthy. The logical prohibition of a deer harvest by licensed hunters only adds to this growing and severe problem. Residents in the impacted area will tell you of the large number of deer, including the large number of young deer that will be reproducing in the coming seasons. I think I've shared with a couple of you that recently I observed 15 yearling deer in a herd behind my house. That is a net addition to the deer population. And a DNR friend of mine said, and most of them that are females will be pregnant within the next year and bear fawn. Master gardeners who live in the impacted area will tell you that the deer are eating and destroying native plant and tree species and landscape material that previously were thought to be deer resistance. So the deer are moving up the food chain. They'll probably stop when they get to thorns, but short of that, they are very voracious. And the deer excrement on lawns, sidewalks, and driveways are causing some families to prevent their grandchildren from playing outside. The growing number of health and accident-related incidents only add to the seriousness of the situation. Now, since the problem is not a citywide problem, with a citywide vote, a majority of the voters outside the impacted area likely will see the problem as not affecting me, or as trivial, or as a simple species protection issue, and vote no. A no vote by citizens not understanding the severity of the problems experienced by a few thousand of their community members likely will constitute a huge barrier to further technically based actions by this council. So my recommendations are: 1, do not treat the unchecked growth deer population as a citywide problem. Instead, treat it as a public, localized, and severe problem requiring technical consultation by people with knowledge in the fields of wildlife management, environmental impacts, property management, and health and accident threats. 2nd, identify a small group of technically applicable persons from MSU Fisheries and Wildlife, Michigan's DNR, possibly Meridian Township, plus specialists in environmental impacts, property damage, and public health. to be invited to undertake a quick analysis of the situation and recommend remedial actions. I believe that persons of this caliber could be identified within a week or two, and assembly of those available for work with the city could follow immediately thereafter. Third, having assembled a group to address the problems, they should consider the various direct impacts and threats of the current situation and the unintended future consequences of not taking action to limit the deer herd size. Very often in governmental functions, nobody is responsible for taking a look at the unintended consequences of actions. So that would be one of the very important things to do. Fourth, the council should stand ready to take technically based remedial actions that are necessary, along with the accompanying educational and informational efforts to be successful. Fifth, and I underscored this, please do not proceed with a citywide vote on deer culling. The majority of city voters likely will be unaware of the severity of the local problem and vote no. That will create an unnecessary barrier that will greatly complicate future remedial actions by the city council. The problem is real and substantial, and the council has a responsibility for its remediation. And then finally, please avoid placing the city council and the rest of city government in position where they would be viewed as simply kicking the problem down the road and appearing to seek cover for not acting. I strongly fear that an approval of a citywide advisory vote on culling would accomplish just that. I want my city council and my city government to be viewed and respected as practicing trust-enhancing behavior, not trust-diminishing behavior. The problem is real, and the courage of the city council to override a citizen no vote would be severely tested. So, I thank you for the opportunity to address you, and I would be very pleased to answer any questions that you might have, or help out with the problem if I'm invited to join you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Glasser. Any questions?
Thank you for coming.
Alice Drager?
Ray told me before, out in the hallway, that there was a typo in his piece, and I said he should tell you it because the mayor, as an economist, would appreciate it, that his statement referred to deer excrement as deer increment.
I thought they were incrementing onto your line, so trying to figure that out.
That's the bias of an economist.
Alice Drager, 621 Sunset Lane, speaking for myself. You have in your consent agenda tonight a move to approve an extended approval period for the Oakwood Historic District Boundary Study and to defer consideration. I've been speaking with attorneys regarding the process that has been used here. I've already talked to you about the substantive issues with regard to content, but I want to talk to you about process on 4 quick points. First, the resolution that City Council passed that initiated the Boundary Study Committee in 2013 called for 5 members, and there have been, in fact, 3 members. 2 dropped off early in the process. The draft was delivered without 5 members, and those members were never replaced. One of the members has repeatedly objected to his name being on the draft report. So that did not follow the resolution. Secondly, the resolution called for, quote, representation from 1 or more duly organized local historic preservation organizations on the Boundary Study Committee. I don't see any evidence that that was fulfilled. That language comes from the state statute, MCL 399.203.3, Section 1. Third, according to the state statute, the committee that did the boundary study was supposed to have taken its draft report and the comments received and created a final report. That has never happened, so that step has never happened. And fifth, as part of that, by the way, it says the committee shall prepare and submit a final report with its recommendations and the recommendations, if any, of the planning body to the legislative body of the local unit. There's been no final report. So fourthly, Mr. Yaden notes in his memo from last week, that after the date of the public hearing, this is a quote from the statute, the committee and the legislative body of the local unit should have not more than 1 year unless otherwise authorized by the legislative body of the local unit to take action. I presume that's why for the first time ever you're actually taking a vote tonight to do that. And Mr. Yaden has suggested that council has acted to authorize the process to go on more than 1 year, but there's never been a vote to do that, and the vote is now past a year. There's nothing in the record that constitutes a vote by the council to continue the process longer than 1 year from the date of the public hearing, which is what the statute calls for. The last vote on the matter, as far as I can tell, in terms of substantive votes, was on May 7th, 2019. Eric Altman's motion was as followed. I took this from the videotape today. Quote, "Move we add the splotch, that we remove the yellow area of the map in front of us from the historic district," unquote. There was no vote to extend the process. At that meeting, council and staff indicated they planned to vote on the actual ordinance that they understood would be reflective of the map. But it never happened, and there was no vote to extend the process before the year ran out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drager. Next is Barbara Godby. Godby, yes, sorry, Barbara.
I've lived in East Lansing longer than any of you are old. So.
Wait a minute.
I'm very
No.
I'm very well.
No,
Probably haven't.
no, I looked it up.
She did her research.
I'm just concerned about the overall direction that East Lansing is taking with all the new buildings and everything. I'm coming to ask you to kind of step back and breathe and ask yourselves, how many rental bedrooms does East Lansing have? Is there a saturation point? We don't know unless we know how many we have. Specifically in the Oakwood neighborhood, it's a beautiful, shady, lovely area of East Lansing. It has a hill, which is kind of rare in East Lansing. They're timeless old houses, most of them in good repair. Please consider grandfathering in those that presently rent rooms out and put a stop to further rentals in this area. This is an elegant, old world part of East Lansing that's earned its stripes and deserves to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on a second. Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a quick comment, I think that opinion is definitely shared by council members to gather more information, and we've actually sent out an RFP for a housing study to address some of those issues that you had just mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely a concern that's on my mind, and I think the rest of council's, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could say one more thing, Annette is in the back in kind of the red check thing. Please talk to Annette, because I think you are already permitted to have a roomer in your house, so talk to her.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Abby Taikaki.
Hi, I live on Blanchette Drive. I'm also the current president of the Pinecrest Neighborhood Association, and I came to provide comment about the ordinance to amend Section 4.4, Chapter 4 to disallow electronic leashes. Speaking as president of the Pinecrest Neighborhood Association, we've experienced a lot of issues with people walking and exercising their dogs off leash in Henry Fine Park. Excuse me. And that's led to a lot of conversation, confusion, misunderstanding, and frustration and arguments over the two separate city ordinances for park and then for all other public places. So I just wanted to say thank you to Mayor Byer for bringing forward a suggestion that would provide clarification on that issue. Taking my president hat off and speaking as myself, I have a dog, and similar to the previous speaker, she's very high energy. She has been through obedience training. She responds to a shock collar, but I would never take her out of the house off leash. And I see that as an issue for safety for everyone, including well-trained dogs and their owners. So I support the changes proposed. But no matter the outcome, I felt it was important to also bring attention to the fact that it's an extremely hard ordinance to enforce. Because even if ELPD responds to a call about a dog owner with a dog off leash in the park, which has happened to me just within the past week and a half, and they responded within minutes, it was amazing. But that owner, after yelling at me and telling me to go ahead and call the cops on him, which I did, produced a leash as he saw the squad car pull up, leashed his dog, and so therefore no citation could be issued. He knew exactly what he was doing. And there really isn't a solution to that other than he said in our argument that he had a very high energy dog that had been trapped in the house because of the ice apocalypse. And I said, I empathize, I have a high energy dog. That guy has a high energy dog. We like dogs to be able to run around in open spaces safely. We have a dog park, but it's closed for most of the year in the winter. And so my suggestion is that we work with Parks and Rec to make sure we can open that dog park year round and have a safe place for everybody to go and exercise their dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. That was heavy. Next is Todd Vandergalen.
They got my name right.
There you go. Well, you printed it nicely and neatly.
I'm Todd Vandergillian. I live at 1087 Fox Hills. This is my neighborhood president. First time I ever met her, I guess. I'm a new dog owner, and I got a very little dog. I've never owned a dog before, so all this dog leashing is new to me. I started walking my dog over at Alton or Patriarch Park, and other people's dogs would come running up to me, which I would grab my dog and hold it because I didn't know if it was going to eat it or not. The house I live in, my parents owned before me. I've been in the house since 1971. I bet 100 times myself or one of my kids have dog poop on their in coming home. I have a trail camera that points in the back of my house that takes pictures of the deer, also takes pictures of the owners that are not leashing their dogs. And I got to tell you, not one of them's got a little baggie in their hand. And most of them got a leash, so when they leave the park, then they leash it. So I'm a little confused on how good the electronic leash works if once they leave the park, they have to do it. I bet a half a dozen times every 2 weeks I see a dog chasing a deer through the back swamp. I'm concerned about my children when a dog comes, and 99% of the dogs are great. But I don't know that when it's come running up to us. Sure. Nobody knows that. And quite frankly, when I see the dogs running around, there is no way I can barely find my dog's droppings when it's 8 feet away from me in the middle of the night. These people got dogs running 50, 100 yards away from them. They're not picking up their poop. And, electronic leash, can you guarantee me that that's gonna stop from getting my 7-year-old around the neck? Got a leash, physical leash around that dog. Now you got some way to pull it off. So we really got to consider something on this electric leash thing.
Just so you know, it's already illegal to have them on an electronic leash in the park. They're only allowed to have electronic leash right now someplace other than a park. Is that right, Tom? That's right. Right. So they're violating the law now, but it'd be easier it would clear it up to have it just no electronic leash.
And I would like to see how many actual people got any citations in the past year, because I've been doing the calling. Okay, I'm calling the police and calling her and emailing and everything else. Half a dozen a day go in my backyard. And I would like the police to show me how many citations have been written. And every day it's at the exact same time. So something needs to be done on that then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Beth Ripley?
I'm Beth Ripley. I live down a couple houses from Todd, 1063 Fox Hills Drive. And I think what he maybe failed to mention or maybe mixed up is that it's Henry Fine Park and Pinecrest Elementary, actually, that's right behind our houses. And the concern, I think the concerns that he and Abby have expressed, I would agree with. The problem that I've seen is, in addition to some of the things they've mentioned, are individuals, but also exercising their dogs, but also small groups that gather with multiple dogs and stand and talk while their dogs just run everywhere. And literally, and I've seen them do it when the kids were out at recess, not this school year, obviously, because Pinecrest is closed right now for the reconstruction. But I've seen dogs run into the entrance of Henry Fine Park and the owner not show up until a minute or two later. Like they were clearly off leash before they got to the park. I've had a dog, my dog was on a tie-out, started to bark. I went outside, started yelling at my dog and grabbing his tie-out to pull him in because I don't want him to annoy the neighbors barking. And the person who was playing catch with his dog, their dog ran through the fringe of trees and went into my yard, almost onto my deck, and started to have an altercation with my dog. And I'm yelling at the owner, and all he says is, "I'm sorry," and he starts to walk parallel, go towards Todd's house to go into the woods. And I'm like, dude, this isn't a dog park. So there's been not just the waste, but those kind of confrontations with other dogs or people. I think the fact that it's so near the playground and the park entrance, and there's the smaller playground at the park entrance for the park users, and there's also the school playground, it's just not safe. And I know that they have talked about calling the police. I've called the police probably 3 or 4 times. Actually, the last time I called was when one of the police officers, a female police officer for the canine unit, came in, parked right next to the ordinance sign that says your dog must be on a leash and you must clean up its waste, and was throwing the ball and exercising her dog in the park off leash. So I got on the phone. I said, this is not a good example for our police to be setting when they're not following the ordinance that the rest of us are all expected to follow. Todd and I had a verbal altercation with a gentleman who just, got really nasty with us about, you need to have your dog on a leash, sir. It's the law. No, it's not. This is the law. And walked his dog, continued. So it's an ongoing thing. And as far as the electronic collars, everything I've read about those, one study in particular from a veterinarian and well-known animal behaviorist says upwards of into like 95% of owners don't use electric shock collars properly. There's too many variables. The collar can be weak, they can be too far away, you can be a second or two too late. We have a lot of wildlife, rabbits, woodchucks, foxes, skunks, deer, bunnies, whatever, everything in the park aside from other dogs, joggers, kids and people on, bikes and things. It's got to be consistent, I think, between the 2 sections of the code, 4 and I think 28, and it needs to be enforced. I'm telling you, your parking and code in violation people could be making lots of money if they came and ticketed the number of people we've seen and continue to have this problem. And it's really been worse in the last couple winters since the dog parks started closing for the winter. And I understand they did that because of the turf damage and the mud and the stuff and everything. But when the dog park's not open and somebody's got a busy dog, and if they don't have a fenced-in yard to let their dog run, coming to our park is not the answer. So I would like to see you guys take care of that and get some consistency and some enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last card I have is Richard Foster.
Thank you. I see that on section 3.9 you have a consideration of changing the date for a public hearing for a site plan and special use permit for core campus manager to build 2 additional skyscrapers in East Lansing, 14-story buildings. I've been a member of this community either as a student or as a business person or as a resident since 1969. And I have never seen such a proliferation of what I would consider excess in terms of the building that's gone on to date. If you'll stop for a moment, On Michigan Avenue, Skyview went in. This year, they're 70% full. That's not economically feasible. The Hub went in. Landmark is going in, or is in. The Abbott is going in. Joel Ferguson is building a $265 million development over on Michigan Avenue, all with student housing. There's a point beyond which East Lansing has to be considerate of its business owners that have been here for decades, that have stabilized this community. If you're not immediately proximate to Michigan State University, I'll bet you a dime to a dollar, there's a real dilemma with many of the apartment owners that are a half a mile away, over on Bircham Avenue. If you drive through East Lansing, there's apartments everywhere, and there's signs in front of every one of them. And they're all saying, we're trying to find tenants. I don't believe that the Michigan State University population is growing as fast as the building that's being allowed. I think what's really happening is there's going to be a diminution in a lot of existing property owners' values, and therefore a diminution, if they take it to the tax tribunal, in property values because of what's going on. I happen to be an apartment owner. I have never seen so much communication between apartment owners about how you doing, how you doing, how you doing. Everybody is sincerely worried about the unfettered and uncontrolled development that's being allowed in this community. I was told when the Hub went in, it's not going to cause a problem. Well, at 11 in the morning, my building is still in the shade right now, and it's right across the street. When does that stop, that overbuilding stop? I think it's incumbent on you guys to take a hard look at what's going on. Why do you cater to Chicago money when you're causing dilemmas for your current property owners that have been in this community for decades? Parking has been a problem in East Lansing. There's less parking than there are apartments. The Hub went in with 88 parking places reserved for 585 beds. The rest was for the businesses downstairs. Now there's a proposal to have 400 parking places for another 720 bedrooms, or multifamily units, if you will, in those two 14-story buildings. I guess I would ask that you take a time out and really research whether or not this community can absorb continued development at this rate, level, and it certainly has, the skyline has changed dramatically. You can't take back what's already taken place, but you can certainly be considerate of your business owners in this community. The foundation of this community is and has been Michigan State University for a long time. And a lot of people have large investments in this community that are being compromised by unfettered growth. And I would just ask that you strongly consider not approving any additional growth until some substantial studies are done to determine whether or not it's warranted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, though, for you. I just want to, for the record, you own the Element, right?
I do.
At the end of Bogue?
Yes.
And are you full?
Yes,
Okay, just, that was my question.
not for next year yet.
Okay, thanks.
And one thing.
That's the point.
We share your concern, and we have put out a request for proposals to actually do a housing study to see if we are at the saturation point already. And that's not just our East Lansing properties, but the Ferguson properties going down there, and also the Meridian Township properties. So we are going to look at all of that, as you suggested.
Well, I've been around here a long time, and I think we've reached a saturation point from what I can observe from, and the ongoing rhetoric of all these property owners that are coming in. How you doing? How you doing? Have you lowered your rates? Have you done this? Have you done that? What you're really doing is setting up it happened in Florida. They overbuilt Florida some years ago, and property values decreased by 70%. Do we really want to go there? You know, because if what you're trying to do is get a larger tax base out of smaller square footage, you may be cutting your nose off to spite your face in the long run when you look at what's happening to all of the existing property owners that aren't immediately proximate to campus, that are the bedrock of this community. And I'd ask you to be very considerate of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address council today? Okay, then we'll move on to communications from the mayor and city council members. We'll start today with Councilmember Meadows.
Wow, you hit me last time,
Yeah,
too.
oh, shoot.
That's good. Just want to mention that earlier this evening I was at a event that was held by the Sierra Club to honor Dana Nessel as the Environmentalist of the Year by the Sierra Club, and I just want to add my voice to those who might say that it's nice to finally have a real Attorney General again. So.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just wanted to thank again the MLK Commission in Michigan for putting on an incredible event. Yesterday, 1,800 people in attendance. This is the largest ever in the 35 years that luncheon has been hosted. Really, really excellent job. We have 3 staff members within the city of East Lansing that are on that commission. Our fire chief, Randy Talaferro, library director, Kristen Shelley, and our HANA director, Elaine Hardy, who also serves as the chair. So really, really proud to be part of a community that does that. It was an incredible event, and I'm very happy that went forward. So,
Councilmember, we'll go here. Greg.
Well, Aaron stole my thunder. I was going to say everything that he just said, so reiterated.
Councilmember Babcock.
Yes, I would like to thank DPW for a phenomenal job this weekend. Earlier today, I was in 2 neighboring localities. We won't name names. They kind of nestle right up against the city of East Lansing to the west. And the residential neighborhood I was in was just a skating rink, which I understand is, it's a residential area, it's always the lowest priority. But East Lansing streets looked phenomenal compared to that. We always get emails after snowstorms about also my personal pet peeve, which is how plows push snow into driveways. I don't know how to fix that. Maybe we should set up some sort of contest at the engineering school across the street, tap that knowledge, I don't know. Maybe the kids at Michigan Tech. My nephew is an engineer from Michigan Tech. They might be best poised. Someday, some way, we'll find a solution to that. There was a little small vehicle moving snow on my street today. I don't know if it was moving snow out of driveways. It actually seemed to be doing that, but I didn't stick around to watch.
We don't do that. We push it into the driveway.
Yeah, well, so I know that we don't want to do that. We don't intend to do that. That's sort of the way the machinery is built. So maybe someday we'll be able to solve that. And my apologies, particularly for the older folks who have to deal with that. My mom was out there in her neighborhood. But our streets looked great compared to some of the neighboring communities, and I want to say thanks.
And I don't have anything. City manager's report.
Just one item to report, and that is that this past Saturday we had our strategic priorities retreat, went over our new priorities with council. Those will be coming back for a final approval and more discussion, I believe, next month. We also had a chance to preview our PBB, priority-based budgeting portal with council, and went over a lot of detail with that. That will be being released to the public by the end of the week. We'll be putting a press release out on social media out to let people know when that's out there. There'll be a lot of great information in terms of financial transparency, and it will make the sort of budget process, and it's not just changing the budgeting process, but it will make our financial spending on all of our priorities much more easy to understand to our residents. So that's sort of the benefit of that. Look forward to that.
And city attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. No report this evening.
Okay, next is the consent agenda. Mr. Landis.
Yes, we have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 3.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards and commissions. A, Felix Fliss to the Tri-County Office on Aging Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2020. B, Jake Yoon to the University Student Commission for a partial term ending September 30th, 2020. 3.2, approve a resolution to order the review of the Code of the City of East Lansing. 3.3, approve a resolution opposing Senate Bills 382 and 383, which do not align with the city's efforts to be a welcoming city. 3.4, approve a resolution to place on the ballot at the election to be held on August 4, 2020, the advisory question of whether the city should cull deer from the city as a part of the effort to manage the deer population. 3.5, approve a proposed settlement agreement in the case of EL East Lansing versus Zydeck. Item 3.6, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license for 600 Albert, Unit 308, that allows for up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the dwelling unit. Item 3.7, set a public hearing for February 25th, 2020 to consider Ordinance 1478, an ordinance to rezone the property at 3118 West Road from RA Residential Agricultural District to B5 Community Retail Sales Business District. 3.8, set a public hearing for February 25, 2020 to consider Ordinance 1479, an ordinance to amend the conditional rezoning originally adopted under Ordinance 1435 for the property at 341 through 345 Evergreen Avenue to allow for revisions to the associated site plan and special use permit now and in the future. 3.9, approve a date change for the public hearing for January 21st, 2020 to be moved from February 25th, 2020 to February 5th, 2020 to consider a site plan and special use permit application from Core Campus Manager LLC for the properties at 131, 135, 207, 217, and 227 Bogue to demolish all the existing buildings on the site and construct a 14-story, 720-unit multi-family development in 2 separate buildings, each at 152 feet tall, including amenities for residents and structured parking for 400 vehicles. Item 3.10, approve a 1-year renewal agreement with 100 Acre Woods Incorporated of Williamston, Michigan, and award a purchase order in the amount of $84,360 for a grounds maintenance contract at the East Lansing Soccer Complex and Hannah Community Center soccer field, and authorize the city manager to sign. 3.11, approve an extended approval period for the Oakwood Historic District Boundary Study and for consideration of Ordinance 1446, 1446A, 1446B, and 1446C to February 11, 2020. Item 3.12, approve a date change for the public hearing on Ordinance 1462 scheduled for January 21st, 2020 to be moved to February 25th, 2020. Item 3.13, approve a contract with Ritz Dunn Wright Construction in the amount of $23,724 to replace the roof and soffits of the Orchard Street Pump House and approve a project contingency of $5,000. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Thank you. Would anybody like anything removed from the consent agenda? Mr. Mays?
I'd like to move item 3.4 to the business agenda.
3.4 will become 5.0 on the business agenda. Mayor Pro Tem?
3.11.
3.11. That will just be after 3.4 on the business agenda. Anything else? Can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say same sign.
I don't think there was a clear vote on that.
Not allowed in that vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Feeling better now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You guys gotta vote.
That's true.
Point.
Vote with gusto.
It actually,
The point of us being.
it actually is the,
Oh, you just,
it actually,
We're demure about it.
you
ladylike.
Okay, but you actually do have to make noise. That's the rule. Okay.
Be careful what you pray for.
All right, so now we're going to move to section 4.1, a public hearing, consideration of an application for site plan and special use permit approval from Rockwood Development Group LLC for the properties at 6290, 6330, and 6350, and vacant land on Abbott Road to develop a 3-phased development consisting of assisted living and memory care building, independent living villas, and a 4-story independent living building. Who is our staff person? Ah, I should have known.
I forgot to remind
Yeah, I forgot to remind you, that's my job. Hang on, I gotta get 311 here.
15 different Tom Farron box.
Yes. 3, 4, and 11.
While that's loading, so I just want to give a brief overview on this. This is a proposal for the Provision Living Senior Housing Community. It's comprised of assisted living and memory care apartments, as well as independent living apartments and independent living single-family villas. Totals are there are 58 units in the independent villas, 160 units in the independent living apartments, and 107 units in the assisted and memory care building. The project is proposed to be constructed in 3 phases, and I'll go through some of those details momentarily. The total site size is just over 23 acres, and the property was originally rezoned a little over a year ago to RM8. This is a conditional rezoning with Meridian Township. It's in a special 425 zone where any zoning changes have to be done as a joint council. The condition restriction on that rezoning is that occupants have to be 55 years of age or older. Let me bring up the site plan here. Listed December. There it is. Get to it. Okay, here we go. Okay. Go through the phasing of the project. Actually, I want to go up to the next 2 slides here. One more. Okay, so phase 1 is the kind of the southwest corner of the site. It involves both the 2-story assisted living and memory care building, and 83 of those units, and a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and also 22 independent living villas kind of behind that. And as we move farther east, the balance of the independent living villas would be constructed in phase 2, and then in phase 3, the 4-story independent living apartment building would be completed. Both phase 2 and phase 3 would be completed by 2025. Phase 1 would be started later this year. As you see on the site plan, there are 2 access points to the site. There's one at the south end of the site on Abbott, and then one kind of mid-stretch there. The Transportation Commission did review the proposed development and requested that there be a pedestrian crossing on Abbott near the south entrance here, and improved median access for vehicles turning left into the site. Comments from the fire marshal. Really, there were a few objections, with the exception of the kind of cul-de-sac or the dead-end drive servicing the independent living villas at the northeast area of the site. That drive had terminated just kind of straight into the last 2 villas. They requested that there be a turnaround, so they've included a couple of kind of a 3-point turnaround there for fire apparatus. Engineering had a variety of technical comments. One of their primary concerns was water, making sure that there's loop throughout the development, which they have now proposed. And comments from our environmental services coordinator. indicated that there would not need to be a review by the Commission on the Environment. There are 2 wetlands on the site. However, they are not making any proposed changes to the regulated wetland. As you can see, there's a larger wetland at the north end of the site here, and a very small wetland that's not regulated over here on the east side of the site. With that, the Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously in December, and I would take any questions or concerns at this time.
Councilmember Meadows.
Just sort of a language question on condition 5. We already have an 8-foot sidewalk there, right?
That there probably is.
Yes, but
Yeah.
it says, it provides that they shall construct an 8-foot sidewalk. I realize we use pretty standard
pretty
language
standard
in
language,
these,
yeah.
but I think we should always take a look at that, not to change it tonight.
Okay.
But, so that if we already have it, maybe it's, the remaining part of this language allows us to take a look at that sidewalk to make sure that it's been maintained properly and may need some repair.
Yeah, that part's
and
in
maybe
there,
that needs to be built into here, that they would have that obligation. And then item 17, I think I read something from you that indicated that, they now have complied with that by changing their site plan. Is that correct?
Complied with what?
17, the dead-end road
Yes.
to provide an
Yep,
adequate
that's
turnaround.
now on the site plan. That used to just go straight in. Now they have the ability to turn around, and that T.
That's already been
Yep, that's
engineered,
incorporated.
and that's what we would be approving tonight?
Correct.
So do we need 17?
No, you could take that off since it's on the plans now.
Okay.
Councilmember Gregg?
That turnaround will accommodate a full-size fire truck?
Correct.
Damn, those guys are good.
Yep. Yep, the fire marshal did review that, and they're comfortable with its current design.
Cool, just seems really tiny.
Especially right now.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
Yes.
Did anyone calculate the carbon footprint?
No. No, it's not, a carbon footprint's not a component of our zoning standards.
Right.
I mean, it's something we could talk about in the future. Also, that would be an opportunity for the Commission on the Environment to weigh in on, but they did not take the plan up to review, so.
Right. Just curious. Right. Thank you.
Can I get a motion?
Oh, you need to ask the public if they want to speak.
Oh, it is a public hearing. Sorry about that, public. I'm new at this. Would anybody from the public like to speak on this agenda item? See, I was right. Nobody
I
wanted to
just
talk.
need one thing about, what about the water park next door? If it's gonna be this 4-story building right there, do I get to be able to go there and not have to try to find an umbrella for my kids because this building's gonna be next door?
So this dark is Abbott Road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the water park's right on the other side.
Oh, wait, what?
Hey, we got the skills.
Wait. Okay, so the water park is actually kind of more up
No,
here.
it's right on the other side of the road.
Well, there's a fairly long entrance driveway in, and then it's like,
That 4-story building, I bet
This
is
one
not
here?
50 yards from the
from the water park?
water park.
Okay, I guess I recall that driveway being much longer.
Time and aerial.
Oh, yeah.
So you actually have the angle. It's not the mass of the building, it's the side of the building that would be towards the water park entrance.
Yeah, 4 stories. Yeah,
Mr. Hayward, was that an issue at all in the discussions?
I would think that would be a little bit of an issue.
So that is correct. The aquatic park is to the north here. So the site is adjacent directly to the aquatic center. Originally, the applicant had proposed this drive that kind of cuts through the site north-south. They had proposed to use the aquatic center drive as like their third entrance. The comments from the parks director indicated that that would be problematic for a variety of reasons. The drive would need to be rebuilt to accommodate the additional vehicles. There would have to be gates and other signalizations and things like that to address that. So they requested that the applicant redesign this without that connection. So that was included in amongst all of those conversations and that feedback, the overall intensity of the site or the size of the building did not come up as a concern.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, based on, you see those little curves kind of right on the top of the site.
Would you like the laser pointer?
Sure. It's a laser
Don't
pointer.
point on Mark's eyes.
Maybe I will.
Just on the side of the head.
So, oh, is this not? Yeah, right there where you're at. So I believe that is actually where the water park would be located, fairly close
It's
to
really
where the
directly
wetland
that wetland,
is, which wouldn't necessarily be right in line with where I understand the concern. I do.
I'd say at noon it wouldn't be a problem, but anytime after noon and the sun's more to the west, that building's gonna shadow the water park.
Actually, it will not, because the building is further west from the actual pool, which is almost directly across from the wetland area that is right there. There's actually a way to look at that on our computers. There's a,
We did a shadow study?
yeah, it takes, the use of your finger to actually measure down from that location, but there's also like a satellite view of the site.
Yeah.
And then you can compare it to the actual site plan
It's on
that's
page-
there.
I just think it should be considered how tall that 4 stories actually is. Do you have like a 2-story first floor and then it's 3 stories up there with a gabled roof on it? And, I think that should be considered.
But that's a good question for David, which is,
How
a
tall is it?
4-story building is how tall under our zoning code?
Actually, the applicant is here, and they have their design professionals that can probably address the actual height of the building and maybe even touch on whether this would have an impact on that. Alternatively, if there is considerable heartburn over whether this would be an impact, we could certainly add a condition that requires it to be studied to eliminate that as a possibility. Other than that, I guess I could invite the applicant to talk about the height.
What do you think?
Sure. What do you think? We did not do a shadow study?
No, we did
Okay.
not. No, I think there would be one.
It's not that tall.
Hello, my name is Dave Bayless. I'm the applicant and also the owner of the proposed facility. I'm prepared to go through a bit about our company and what we're planning on doing, unless you'd like to just jump into.
I think we have a pretty good understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah,
The only
okay.
question we've had from the public so far is about the shadow. Did you look at that at all?
I've never been asked that question. We did not look at it. Typically, a 4-story building, it's about 12 feet a story. So that'd be 48 feet. I do believe the aquatic park, it is set back off the road compared to where our building is. And while I haven't done a study, I would have a hard time imagining that the shadow at any point during the day would affect the aquatic park.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Okay, you can ask.
Staying
Councilmember
here.
Babcock would like to hear more about what's in our packet.
It's new to me, so perhaps you could, just a brief description of what you're doing.
I have some pictures and things, and I can make that very quick. It's up.
Is that everything that's in our packet?
No.
Oh, okay, sure.
So it's pictures of similar buildings that we've built in Michigan, and I'd be happy to do that. Are you able to cue that up?
Switch on the PowerPoint down.
Oh, okay. I'm in control.
Yep,
Right here?
Yep.
We're going to have all the old people and all the young people and no middle people.
I know.
Which is actually not a bad thing.
No.
So before I get into the pictures, I'll make this very brief. We're a privately held company. I have 2 partners. We're based in St. Louis, and we focus on assisted living and independent living throughout the Midwest. We've been in business for 13 or 14 years. We've been interested in building in Michigan for quite a long time, for 4 or 5 years. And really just focus on the Midwest. Our core, we are developers, we do own the buildings, but our core business is taking care of seniors. and being part of communities and being part of their families, whether it's the adult children or the senior or whoever that may be, and that is our primary focus. Yes, we would like to build this building, but we don't go anywhere. We really become part of the neighborhood and part of the fabric of the community, and that is our main focus. I'm going to zip through these just in a sense for time. We've covered much of this already, and I can go back to the details of it. I'm just really going to push forward to pictures. So we just built this building in West Bloomfield last year. We built a sister building just like it is in Grand Rapids, and this is what the assisted living community would look like. Now, the materials that we'd use on the exterior will take into full consideration as to the East Lansing area and what materials are used, and we would make it appropriate for this area. Here's an aerial view of that building. You can see and then here's the Grand Rapids similar building. And the reason I jumped forward to this is we really focus on the open space and walking paths and green space as much as we can.
Can I ask the
Yes.
question? Is this typical of what the villa part of the development would be, or is this the main building?
This would be, I'm going to click back one. This would be that main building on phase one.
Okay.
So it's a 2-story building. It's assisted living. It's 107 units, and it has assisted living and memory care in it. And so on the site plan in the lower left-hand corner, that first building that David talked about, where it's phase one.
Okay.
And then surrounding that, we would start with roughly 24 independent living villas, which would be associated with that primary building. Did that cover your question?
Yep.
Okay. When we get into the exterior, I just want to show you a few pictures. We try and make it very home-like, but also create a sense of I'd call understated elegance, and really design it to the area. This is West Bloomfield, or this is Grand Rapids, excuse me. We'll have beauty salons and bistros and theaters and exercise space. The resident rooms, there's 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and studios. Residents bring their own furniture, so they're surrounded with their own things. And these are just pictures of that. And then these are just examples of other buildings we've built in Lexington, Kentucky. You can see the architecture is a bit different because the area that we were building was really demanded this direction in the architecture. Again, here's some interior shots. Just wanted to give you a sense of what we're planning on building. Again, outside spaces. And so really within our communities, we like to design them so people really don't have to go anywhere, although we do have transportation because we want them to be part of the community. And that's a big focus as well. So I think you get the idea in regards to the various pictures.
Thanks.
Did that?
Mayor Pro Tem?
You think?
It's not just me, I think there are people in the audience
Okay.
who aren't familiar.
I wasn't, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sorry.
I just didn't hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, do you think that there's a growing market for this type of housing in our community? We have seen an influx of proposals, not necessarily an influx of proposals, but we did just open the first iteration or the first phase of Stonebriar over at Bertram Hills. Is there a market study attached to this, or why is this community the?
We've been studying East Lansing for a number of years now. In the cycle of our business, we decided to take a break for a few years of developing. We came back, I'd say a year or two ago, to relook at it. One of the communities that we're excited about is East Lansing. For the assisted living and independent living product, we absolutely feel that that it's underserved, and our product can fit right into that.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to comment on this public hearing? Then I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I'll move approval of the site plan and special use permit with regard to this project with the first 16 conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other amendments or discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then this is approved. Good job.
Can I say one thing about this? When this property was brought into the city, there have been a number of proposals with regard to the use of this property, and I think we approved some years ago a housing project on this property. The most recent proposals, which actually were the zoning changes, were taken care of by a joint committee of Meridian Township and the city of East Lansing as part of the 425 agreement that brought this property into East Lansing. But the proposals that were presented to the city council initially, as this project sort of matured during the last 4 years, were all student housing proposals. And the city council was very resistant to approving any of that. Meridian Township, not so much, but it took, I think, our whole 3 votes to get something done. The mayor, myself, and the former mayor pro tem were on that committee, and this product is a great product for the city of East Lansing. There's just recently was a discussion in conjunction with the census and the MML about how communities are going to deal with this growing older population within their borders. We have obviously 18 to 24 as our major component, but we do have a very growing population that will take advantage of a product like that. And I used to be on the Bircham board, and we've been talking for years on how we can expand, because they have a very limited footprint there to expand on. So their product is designed to address this population as well. And I want to thank you for taking a chance on East Lansing, and good luck with everything that you're doing.
Thank you for the consideration.
Okay, and now we're going on to the business agenda, and we will start with 3.4, which was to approve resolutions placed on the ballot at the election on August 4th, the question of deer culling. And who, you want to take us off?
I'm going to make a motion if I can, and then if it's seconded, I'll talk about the whole thing. But I'm going to move to authorize the city manager to establish and implement an annual program to cull deer for the purpose of managing the deer population of the city of East Lansing in a manner which protects the health and safety of our citizens.
I'll second.
Okay.
Moved and
And then I know we talked about this resolution before it went on the agenda. And at the time we talked about it, I said, I know we have 2 new members. The rest of us have been involved with the pro-deer cull and the anti-deer cull comments for a lengthy period of time. But there are 2 things that happened that made me rethink the idea of this proposal that was on the agenda this evening. One was a comment by Councilmember Babcock last time that she's very reluctant to rely on advisory ballot proposals. We're elected to make decisions, not necessarily to sort of do something else. And tonight, Dana Nessel, when she was accepting the award, made the comment that she doesn't make decisions based on polling. She makes decisions on what she thinks is the right thing to do. I think the right thing to do is for us to establish and authorize the city manager to establish a deer culling program in the city of East Lansing. In every single neighborhood that I campaigned in last year, people came to the door and complained about the deer population in their neighborhood. Every single neighborhood. So I think in one sense, when Ray says there'll be areas of the city that nobody will care about this, I think the truth is every single neighborhood has an issue involving deer, skunks, and other critters that seem to be invading the neighborhoods at this point in time. So I'm making the motion because I think it's time for us to make a decision and just to go forward with this. So that's why I made the motion.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So I supported the idea of putting this on the ballot, just because I think we've had a couple of really well-run meetings on this with not necessarily the highest attendance. I would say that we've got a lot of passionate people for and a lot of passionate people against. And I am understanding of the fact that we are elected to make decisions, but when we have a decision before us where we've seen other communities make decisions on behalf of the community and then get a good amount of retribution back, and what we're doing is we're not just talking about like this council doing this. We're talking about continuous years, multiple years of deer culling. It's not a one-time thing. I think it's not the worst thing in the world to have this on the ballot and have the people that it's going to be affected by represented in it. I am sympathetic to the concern that people might vote no because they don't view it as their own issue, and that can be a valid argument, but at the end of the day, I think this is a community decision, and I would maybe implore those who want to have a vote on it today to consider deferring this item. City Manager, I'm going to ask a question. When's the last date we would need to have this on the agenda to put it on the August ballot?
I believe we have until the beginning of May, so I think you'll at least have one meeting in May. I can check on that, but there is time beyond this meeting, and certainly to have that discussion, that'd be up to council.
So if we don't want to put this on the ballot right now, if we want to have the discussion, make the decision, I would implore people to maybe think about not voting for this call right now, and then we defer this item to a later date and possibly have the item of deer culling on a discussion-only agenda and then a regular agenda, and just make the decision then, if that's the will of the council. I don't know how I'm going to vote on this item, just because I've heard both things. I understand the safety concerns. But I also understand the concerns of residents that don't want to move forward with it. And so this was a way for us to get more public input on this issue. I always think public input is a good thing. And while I would not advocate this for every single issue, I think because this is such a contested issue within our community, it was a good proposal to have this on the ballot. But that's my piece.
Councilmember McGregor?
I have a few questions for George, if you don't mind if I just interview you. I would have asked you this during our biweekly check-ins had I realized that there might be a possibility of voting on it, but just because there's not, is winter the appropriate season to cull deer?
Generally speaking, they would want to do it in the winter time. So we're at the time now we'd want to do it, but if council would authorize me tonight, I do not believe we could have a deer cull this winter. Because I don't know the exact steps, but I know we need to go back to the state of Michigan DNR to get authorization for the city to have a cull. Then we need to partner with the organization, the USDA, and contract with them to do this, so that there are a number of steps that would have to be done to get this to happen, that I do not think this could happen this winter at this point.
So, which is kind of where I was going with my question. So my feeling is, I am actually totally with you, Mark, and Lisa, from your comments last week. I like the clean cutness of just, making a decision. I feel like this is a slightly messy way to take a public opinion poll, but I also feel like just consolidating the comments of my fellow council members, I don't think we have a clear consensus here. I think we have a definite yes, a definite no, 2 definite maybes, and I'm a probable yes, just because I've got concerns about health issues. Anyway, I've heard some very terrible personal stories about Lyme disease and other insect-borne illnesses over the last couple of weeks that have made me quite compelled to think that we should address it before it becomes a concern. But I don't know if we could pass it. Even if we did pass it tonight, I feel like we couldn't implement it until next winter, which is when we would be able to implement it after the ballot question. And then my hope would be, if there was a clear communicated message through that ballot that the maybes would be swayed by the will of the community, so.
Actually, if you don't mind me asking a follow-up to that, so this was my main concern, the reason why I'd be receptive to having just a decision made, because people say, well, we're gonna have to endure a summer of the deer as an issue. So from my understanding, what you're saying is we would have to address it next winter either way.
At this point, I believe it's too late for the city to engage a deer cull this winter if council would authorize that tonight. I just don't think we have the time to get that in place at this point. I'm not certain of that, but just after the conversations we've had we had this conversation and came close to this issue several years ago with the USDA. At that point, we decided not to go forward. I don't think we have the time to implement it at this point. So if council wants me to go check that, of course, then now we're taking more time to check that. But I don't think we have time to implement it yet this winter.
So just as a comment, I mean, if we're not going to be able to implement it this winter, I don't see an issue with maybe. All right, and you know what? I can have a changed opinion and be receptive to just wanting to make a decision on that. I understand the point for it. We're elected to do so, and I can grow on that that viewpoint. But if this isn't a time-sensitive issue, we still have time to possibly put it on the ballot. And quite frankly, the public is aware of a question to put something on the ballot. They're not aware of, based on our agenda, an actual vote on a deer cull tonight. So, if we're soliciting at the least public input at one council meeting on this, I'd be more comfortable voting.
Councilmember Babcock?
Thank you. I want to thank Councilmember Meadows for pulling it off the consent agenda. I've received emails in the past week, some pro-deer, some pro-culling deer, but the universal thread has been, you chickens, we elected you to make decisions, and I really don't want to make, I want to be a chicken, I really don't want to make this decision, but I think, I agree with Councilmember Meadows, this is sort of what we're elected to. That said, and I appreciate him putting his position out there so candidly. That said, I don't think we should vote tonight on culling, but I would like, because there will be many, many members of the public who want to weigh in. And I know you can remind me of this at 3 in the morning when we stagger out of here. But I think we do need to give the public opportunity to weigh in. And then I think as a council, we have to make the decision.
Yeah.
That's my, so.
Councilmember Gregg?
I'm going to be wishy-washy. So my preference would be to vote on it solid. My other preference would be to not continually extend it indefinitely. So if we are in a position where we would not be able to implement this until winter and we have a fairly divided council, I don't see any particular harm in going ahead and authorizing this resolution before us, understanding that we will probably be receiving feedback on this up until the August ballot when it is on there. And we'll probably hear many opinions. I've recently been a member of the public, and I have been frustrated by the way that things get. I'm on the authority now, Ruth. Okay. I'm the man now. Okay. But it was a pattern that I just was very frustrated with from the other side of the bench, where we schedule something and then delay it for something, and then it comes back 4 more times, and it's just frustrating. So this is before us. Nothing can particularly happen before August anyway. There doesn't seem to be any harm in it to go ahead with it. So if it would take some of the question out of some of our maybe council members, then it's not my favorite solution, but I'm not opposed to it.
So you're referring to as placing it on the ballot,
yes,
correct?
Passing what we've got ahead of us.
Oh, you already spoke.
My bad.
Councilmember Meadows.
All right, well, we have a motion. We have a motion on the table.
I'm supposed to say that. We have a motion on the table.
We have a motion on the table I know, but I'm going to talk about, sort of the comments I've heard here. I think that, first of all, I don't think we know whether we could implement this winter or not. And I think that's something that it would be useful for us to know. And I don't think it's kicking it down the road to move it to our next business meeting, and then in the interim, ask the city manager to see whether it is possible, because we got a lot of winter ahead of us, because we haven't had much winter until just recently. So I'm thinking it's going to be long enough that we can take advantage of it. But I think we do need to know how quickly one could be implemented, and that could inform on whether we want to move forward and just make a decision or not. And on the night that we would make that decision, obviously the public would be better informed that we're going to make a decision that night one way or the other.
Yeah.
I'm still not in favor of the resolution under any circumstances. I think at some point, I don't want to kick the can down the road to August just because we can't implement until next year. I think we need to let the public know what our direction's going to be, and we can do that more quickly than waiting till then. So what I would suggest is that I would withdraw my motion if you will agree as the seconder, and then I'll move. I don't want to defer the resolution, so I think we should take a vote on it.
Okay, so
personally.
you want to take a vote on whether we put it on the ballot
Correct.
tonight? That's what I was
And
thinking
then-
as well. So you have withdrawn your
Then
motion?
we could schedule instead another meeting after that.
I will support the withdrawal of the motion.
Okay.
So we're back to square one. I'll move approval of the resolution then.
Second.
Any discussion?
So,
Just approving the resolution as stated would be to put it on the ballot.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I will be voting no. So.
okay.
Councilmember Babcock, you look perplexed.
I am perplexed. So if this resolution passes and we put it on the ballot, and then we're not going to do anything until the August ballot as a council, or?
I don't think putting it on the ballot.
The ballot is just advisory, so we
Yeah.
can do whatever we wanted from now until August. It would be unlikely that we would.
Well, I mean, okay, so if I'm a member of the general public, or
Which
just
you
me,
are.
I'm sort of, I have a tiara, thank you. I don't wear it to council meetings. Just really bad days in the office. Okay, if I were just me, just flat out confused, which I am. So we'd put this on the ballot, and then we don't discuss it again until the poll results come in August 4th or whatever.
Right?
Right, okay.
I don't think we'd have to stop
What I'm
discussing it.
suggesting instead is that we vote it down at this point in time with the understanding at the very next meeting or discussion meeting, whatever the next meeting is, that the city manager will tell us whether it is possible to implement this year. And earlier than next winter. And if it is, then we can make a decision whether we want to go forward at that time. But I'm not supportive of the idea of putting it on the ballot. So.
Councilmember Gregg?
Will voting it down tonight preclude us revisiting it in the future? Okay.
We have until May if we want to put it on the August ballot.
Well, just when you defeat a resolution,
Oh,
can you
oh.
immediately vote on exactly the same resolution, or is that,
In the next meeting, you can move to reconsider your vote.
Right.
Or you can just reintroduce,
Okay.
a resolution.
We'll just replace some ands and ors and change the punctuation. Got it, fine. As long as it doesn't tie our hands from revisiting in the future, that seems great. I also would like to know if it would be possible to implement this season.
Okay, so the question we have right now is, do we want to put this on the ballot in August? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question as well, or comment?
Just a comment.
Okay.
If it's the consensus of the council and the community that we just need to make a decision on this, I'm fine with not voting it. Not voting it on the ballot. I think that if we're not going to do that, then there needs to be either some kind of public outreach on this beyond what is normally just posted as a public hearing. This is a big issue for a lot of people within our community, and so I would like to see some kind of extra communication from city to notify neighborhoods, especially that tend to be affected by this issue, that we're going to be discussing it on a city council agenda, more than just what would be public notice of the agenda. So I'm fine with us making this decision, but I want to get as much public input as we can, and I think that we've gotten some public input in the past that has been either split down the middle, or it has been not a representative population. So which is why I originally thought this might be a good idea, but I would like to see some outreach on that. So
I have a problem with selective outreach for soliciting opinions. I mean, we really can't do that. We can't go to affected neighborhoods and say, come tell us what you think about the deer, and not go to the co-ops and say, tell us what you think about not killing deer.
Solicitation.
Yeah, just more, I don't know how much more we can do besides have a notice. I guess we can put it on the website.
Press release, website, council communication.
That's fine.
Do you want it to be for the next regular meeting or the next work session?
Yeah, you should give us your report by the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't want it to be at a work session. If we're going to get all the information by the next business meeting, we can just vote on it at the next business meeting. Which will go overnight, in case you wonder.
You have a council neighborhood president's meeting before that meeting anyway.
We have one next week.
Yeah, and at that meeting, I mean, you should probably talk to them about that. So.
Yep, don't forget that.
Or have a presentation on it or something.
So it looks like February 11th would be the next business meeting.
Yeah, I think
Councilmember Meadows?
You know, on the 15th, or in 2015, this was like one of the first issues we dealt with.
I've been dealing with
and
this
so
issue for
we
6
did
years.
have substantial public comment that at least 3 members had never heard. So I think it is a good idea to try to send out a press release so that we can get as many people in here as possible.
Okay, any other comments? So all those in favor of putting this on the ballot say yes. All those opposed say no. No. So this does not pass. The next item is number 3.11, which was on the consent agenda, is now on the business agenda, which is the extended approval period for the Oakwood Historic District Boundary Study. Councilmember.
So was there an original extension, as Mr. Traeger referred?
So in December 17th meeting, it was on the consent agenda for extension, and council passed the consent agenda. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
So you took action in December when it was on your consent agenda. That action extended it.
Okay.
All right, so at this point.
Okay, I've got a question.
Sure.
On this, then. I'm more interested in the comment by Mr. Traeger about the fact that there is actually no report. There is a draft and not a final report. Was it finalized at some point? Because I'm not so sure actually any of these timeframes start until it's finalized anyway, but I don't know that we can act on it without it being finalized. So.
I haven't been involved in that process. Mr. Fairbach may know.
So my understanding is that it was transmitted to the council, which would indicate that it was finalized.
Okay, can we find out more about that before?
Certainly.
Okay. I mean, we'll find out that answer before we take it up again, I assume.
Okay, but so right now it's just sitting here on the business agenda, so we need to vote yes or no to extend it.
Right, and set the date to February 11th.
Right.
So I'll move that.
I'll second that. Any discussion?
February 11th is going to be an awesome meeting.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so it is moved.
We have more than just that one. Awesome meeting.
Gonna make sure I drink my coffee that morning.
All right, so the next item is 5.1, consideration of an ordinance 1481, an ordinance to disallow electronic dog leashes. And this is 5.1. Ruth Beyer. Oh, me.
Hey, will you look at that?
Okay, so I did bring this forward because there is so much confusion of these leash laws. You can't have a dog on an electronic leash in a park, and that's where most of these dogs are, on electronic leashes. So that's already against the law. You can have an electronic leash on a dog on the sidewalk as long as they're under control. And what we've found a lot of places, what I've seen a lot of places, is people walking their dogs without a leash at all and claim to have an electronic leash, which they don't. And because we live in a city and we're not out in the country, I just think we need to be very clear that we have nothing against dogs. I have 3 dogs. I walk my dogs with the leash. And when my dog gets off by accident, like it did on Saturday, and ran to the Hannah Center, it's a horrifying thing because dogs are not safe off leash. So that's why I have this, and I'd appreciate a motion to approve.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry.
I can make a motion to approve.
Oh, I'm
501.
sorry, I thought-
That's fine. It's moved and seconded. Any questions? Councilmember Gregg, I heard a gasp.
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Can I make one comment
Yeah.
about that? I don't like to take away something without offering something, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of all of the different dog parks that we have in town, not just the Northern Tail Dog Park, but Meridian Township just built a small dog park that's specific for animals under 30 pounds, which is at Nancy Elmore Park. They're opening a large dog park next spring. And we also have the Solden Dog Park in the Ingham County system. And I personally would like to see an additional dog park added to our Parks and Recreation offerings. And so I've asked the city manager to work with me on that and start studying where that might work.
And along the same lines, can you look at how we could possibly keep our park open without ruining it? I know it gets...
That was the challenge, that we had the park open year-round, and we got a lot of complaints, and people became very dissatisfied with the condition of it.
Right.
Because the turf gets destroyed in the wintertime because it's muddy, snow-covered, and it never gets a chance to rebound. Once it's destroyed, you can't regrow it, so it becomes a maintenance nightmare. So I can talk to Parks and Rec about that, but people will be extremely dissatisfied with the condition of it year-round, instead of having the opportunity. But certainly we can talk about the strategic priority of coming back to council and studying where we could put another dog park. But I think that the Parks and Rec may well recommend the same thing, which is that it closes for a portion of the year to make sure the turf doesn't get destroyed during the winter months. But again, a discussion for council to have and give us direction on.
One of the things that I have noticed just through my connection with Ingham County is that a larger dog park takes less wear. So we have a very small dog park with a lot of dogs using it. And if we could open a second one, hopefully that population would go down, or find an area to put in a much larger dog run so that it does not take so much use.
It sounds like a lot of the dogs are right now in Patriarch and in Hannah and in Henry Fine, and so they're everywhere now. Once we put them in a dog park, it's actually going to.
Right.
I want to ask a question actually directed towards that, because at one point we talked about the development of Bircham Park, and we do have a solar array in there, but we have a large green space there that, because of the litigation that we've had in that area, we really have never used for any purpose other than open space, except back in the 50s when we had a baseball diamond in there, crazily, baseball diamond with glass coming up and out of the ground. But can you check and see whether that might be an appropriate location for us?
It's a good question, because I do not know if that passive use park can be used for that purpose, but I can check and see.
I think it'd be.
Yep.
It's a nice bigger
worth checking
space.
out, definitely.
It is. I'll check into it and get back to you.
When could we maybe expect a conversation around the year-round? And
I think both of those are good conversations for strategic priorities. Council wants that to come back because the study of this issue and also improving putting more parks into the system is a big time-consuming issue. So
okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing for a priority discussion, which we said we would have in March, I think, is what council said, to bring the priorities back.
okay, thank you.
If that works for council.
All right, at that, we're adjourned.